9th, 2023. It's our first of 23. I want to say Happy New Year to all. Like always, we will honor America by pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. It'll be a pretty quick meeting. I hope so, because we have a national championship game to watch tonight. So. Go Dogs. All right. So we're going to start right away with other business. I'm just going to look over to Dennis. Dennis, tobacco agent. Dennis.
Robbie Griffin is the tobacco agent, and Robbie applied for a truck driver operator position in the DPW, and Jesse and Don DiMartino interviewed him. They were very impressed with him. Robbie's family actually owns, not many people know this, but they own like a form business. They do a lot of cement work. So he grew up doing construction related activities. When we see him, we always see him in his tobacco agent role, where he looks, doesn't look like somebody who'd be out there in the trenches. But I did interview him just to get a good feel for making sure that he is somebody that understands that, you know, this is, you know, a 24-hour emergency response type operation. And he's all in. He wants to do it. I think he has the right attitude, very responsible in the job he's done. The Board of Health is very happy with the job that he's doing. So in order for him to continue as the tobacco control agent, we'd have to make that position special employee status, and that he'd be drawing 2 pays from the town of Bellingham. He would be a truck driver operator in the DPW and tobacco control. And he does understand that the truck driver operator DPW position would take precedent in an emergency situation or an overtime situation over the other. So that's what that is about. We're asking that the board vote to have that tobacco control agent's position designated as special employee status.
Are there any questions from members of the board? Sounds pretty straightforward. Michael? No, you good? So moved. So
Second.
Whatever. Well, was there a motion? Dennis was
Dennis made
actually
the
a motion. Actually a motion. I said it so someone would say so moved. Now I'm delaying things. Sorry. All right. Any further discussion? Do we get a second? Do we get a second? Kelly, we did. All right, we have first, we have second. No further questions. I call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next, Dennis, you're still on the clock here. Again, yeah, you are. We created an assistant town treasurer position, and we're fortunate that we have someone in-house that applied, and Mary and Sandra Matar, our treasurer collector, along with Beth Cornell Smith, interviewed. And I'll let Mary speak to Lindsay's appointment, since you're sitting here, since you did the interview.
Sure, absolutely. So as Dennis said, we created a new position. This is an assistant treasurer collector. This would be second in command in that particular office. The biggest change with this position is that this position would now have supervisory responsibilities over the other staff in the office, as well as perform a lot of the day-to-day functions, specifically around cash management, our investment portfolio, managing our cash book, as well as all of the over-the-counter traffic and bulk treasury collection functions. This position would also offload some of the responsibility for our tax title portfolio to this new position. Right now, you need to be a certified assistant treasurer collector in order to have that type of responsibility, doing the research, working directly with our tax title attorney. So as Dennis indicated, we did have a couple of candidates. We had an internal candidate who was the selected appointee for this particular position. That would be Lindsay Gentile. She's been with the town for a number of years, has certainly proven herself in her capacities within that office. And we are very excited to make this offer to her and hope that you guys support the appointment this evening.
Yeah, and she just recently received her certification.
Exactly. So the Mass Treasure Collectors Association offers 2 professional designations, a certified treasurer and a certified collector. Lindsay has recently got, after a number of years and a lot of coaxing, did go ahead and pursue the certification. She passed on her first try. It was very exciting for her and for the town of Bellingham. So she did receive her treasury, certified treasurer's designation, and she will be pursuing her certified collector's designation in the future.
We would be leaving a position vacant in that office. This one will be moving up, so it's the same number of people, just a different structure.
Exactly.
So I made that appointment and would ask the board to ratify the appointment of Lindsay Gentile to the assistant treasurer.
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second. Are there any questions for Dennis? Mary? No further questions.
I love that we're promoting from within. Welcome here.
Great.
Lindsay's
Always great.
fabulous, and I was telling them, she's so friendly and always so helpful and just like a breath of fresh air. So I'm very happy with
I
this.
used to push her in the neighborhood on a tricycle when she was 3.
Several decades ago. All right, so we have a first, we have a second, no further questions. I call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion carries.
Who was the second? Sorry.
Cindy.
Thank
All right, next, vote, grants, gifts and grants.
I move that the Board of Selectmen accept the gifts and grants as listed herein with said expenditures to be under the direction of the parties noted. I am just gonna read because we have two big ones. We have one in the amount of $2 million, and that's the MassWorks grant for the Hartford Ave Regional Improvement Project. The second big number one is another 2 million, and that is from Mass DOT for the same project. So that is the 4 million for that project. Senior Safe Grant, $2,227 from the Commonwealth, and Student Awareness of Fire Education, 4,381, and those were secured by Chief Gentile.
Excellent.
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second. Is there any question? No, nothing, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All, well, we're ratifying, right? No.
No.
No,
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 we have
approving,
to
right?
vote.
We have to- we have to vote on this. All, motion carries. Next. Bid award, Depot Street improvement at Railroad Crossing.
Mr. Chair, I move that the contract 2023-3 SRX Depot Street Road Improvements at Railroad Crossing be awarded to the low bidder, the Hatch Group, Inc. of Milford, Mass. In the amount of $110,973.
So we have a first, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, I move for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
As Don's noted, that's gonna require Depot Street to actually be shut down for about a week, and we're gonna be doing it. And of course, we'll get the AM/PM traffic through, and it'll be done when school is not in session this summer, so it's a somewhat involved project.
I feel like I see the Hatch Group a lot now, all of a sudden. Their trucks, signs.
Is it the same one, Hatch Paving?
I think it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
just grown now. Yeah.
And that's what this is. It's just specialized paving works by the tracks.
Okay, next, we have Regal Cinema. We have a change of officer.
Yep, this is just a change of officer. This Al Sundry has been appointed as president, CEO, treasurer, and director of Interstate Theaters Corporation. There's no ownership change, it's just strictly a change in an officer. I could have a motion.
We have a motion to approve.
No? Can we just say so moved to what Hillary just said?
I
Yeah, you can do that.
I don't see a motion in here.
I didn't write up a motion.
That's okay.
So moved.
So we have a first, by Cindy, we have a second by Ms. Barnes. Any further discussion? None? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay? Motion carries. All right. Vote on December 19th minutes.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the minutes of our December 19th, 2022 meeting as presented by Hillary.
Second?
First, we have a second. Any question? So we have to read through the minutes. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I'm gonna slow this down. I don't want to break any records tonight.
Why? It's the new year, new you.
I know, man. Good. All right, annual license renewal, Hillary.
So you saw, what I posted, these are the rest of every single one of our licenses are now done as of tonight. These are some bulk storage and the common vic, if you recall from last time Subway, we held on that because of some outstanding real estate taxes. They came in and paid their tax.
Isn't that interesting how when you ask them to come in, all of a sudden within a few days, they come in and pay what they owe. Exactly. So I just want
It's
to
called
comment,
leverage.
Billy, outstanding job.
Thank you.
I mean, you've been on this board for not as long as Mr. Connors, but I can tell you, I just remember how long it would take us to collect.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's like, we're in our first meeting in January, we're up to speed. I mean, that's outstanding
Yeah.
work.
Nobody
So
messes
thank you
with
so much. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's awesome. Thank you.
So if you want to just make a motion to approve, the remainder of the, renewal permits for 2023 and the attached. I'll put this within the next.
Second?
So I didn't get the first. Is that Cindy?
Yeah.
Cindy, second, Kelly. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? All right, this is always an interesting conversation, isn't it? That's just for the record.
You're gonna support this one. So every year that ABCC asks us to estimate our temporary increased resident population as of July 10th. It's basically for a seasonal population in the town of Bellingham. So we usually estimate about 500, but we think this year we're gonna estimate zero. Zero
Increase at all.
Michael, do you support that?
I think it's at least two.
Oh, boy, all right, so we.
I was trying to digest the whole thing and it's trying to catch up with it.
Yeah.
Every year the ABCC sends us this sheet, we need to make a motion to say how much the seasonal population in our town will increase.
Mhm.
And they do it for seasonal towns like the Cape, because if you have a bigger population, then they can have more liquor stores, and they can hand out more liquor licenses.
Yep.
But it doesn't really apply to the town of Bellingham.
So that's,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe in the 1920s when, you know, Hiawatha and Silver Lake were places to go when you go in the city.
When the childhood rule was in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
So-
charitable.
Zero. It's gonna say
Yeah.
zero.
So
So
no,
all in favor of the
no
zero,
increase.
no increase.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have a
Always go to the
motion?
chapel- always go to the chapel in May.
Didn't we? I don't know. No, I don't think
No,
so.
we didn't, thank
I
you.
missed it.
I gotta have myself.
Okay.
We have a motion.
So moved.
No, do we have a motion? Make the
I
motion.
make a
I thought-
motion to
Is that your motion?
Leave population unchanged.
Right.
leave
Yeah, there you
leave
go.
our
Kelly's. first.
seasonal population as zero.
No increase.
Michael second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank
Okay,
you, I need to
you're
sign that.
next.
I swear we do know what we're doing.
We do really.
And then-
Getting excited to get out of here.
No, I need one more.
Yes, you have one more.
Can I have a motion to open the annual town meeting warrant with a close date of Friday, February 24th?
Second.
Maybe first, maybe second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right. Dennis, you have anything?
Just a couple of things. Been a little bit of chatter about the basin in front of the middle school, which is really gonna be like a rain garden. There's gonna be about 140 plantings according to the plan, several trees. But we did go before the school committee, myself and Don DiMartino a year ago, and explained to the school committee what we were looking at and gained their approval, because there really weren't a whole lot of other options other than taking up like a softball field in the back. But we're gonna go before or I'm gonna be going before the school committee tomorrow, and our engineer for the project, Andrew Vakovich of CHA Engineers, is going to be there as well. Just to show the plan again, the school committee really hasn't had any reaction to it, but it's more, I know there's some social media postings about what are they doing over there, and what's the impact going to be. So Andrew will be going over that. What you see there now will be about 2 feet higher than it is right now, because the materials will go in. There'll be a lot of plantings. It's designed so after a heavy rain, I think it's a 50-year storm, it could accumulate up to 12 inches of water, which will dissipate and no greater than, I believe it's 48 hours. So it dissipates very quickly. So it's not designed to hold water. The storm just before Christmas, there was probably a foot of water in there when I drove by, and I thought, oh boy, tomorrow it's gonna be frozen. The next day, it was bone dry. So not even connected yet, just the soils themselves are absorbing the water. But it's unsightly the way it looks right now, but there are gonna be a lot of plantings, some trees and essentially what it does is it filters the impurity that come, wash off the road into the storm drains, filters it so the water that goes into the ground that we get our drinking water from is cleaned.
So we're also thinking with Pete, with the school committee is to use this as an educational source for the science class. and
Which
different
Dave
things.
Cutler had embraced a
Yeah,
year ago.
So I think that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Green communities, we did receive, I think the board may have gotten notice on that, an $80,000 green community grant for some, a lighting project, an LED lighting project down at the Petro Elementary. So that was good news and good work by, primarily by, the Doug Houston. I know worked hard on it. I know Hillary was involved in it, and Joanne Rebello, I think, all participated in that. So some great work there. The civil service.
I have a question before you go on. I think that's great news. Is there any forecast, like what the savings will be from electric consumption by changing over? Do we have any idea, like maybe over 5 or 10 year period? what we'll
That
save?
had to be included in the grant application.
What is that number? Do you recall?
I don't know what that number is.
It must
but we can certainly get it.
I'm just more curious
Yep.
because we get 80,000, but which is fantastic, and we're gonna save money at the same time by being involved in these programs.
Because of the second green community grant that we got. So
That's great.
by being designated a green community, it certainly has
Mhm.
paid off.
Excellent.
But that's obviously information that has to go with the application,
Right.
what the
Okay.
return on investment looks like. Civil service posting for police chief, it is up. So that has been posted, and it also, one of the requirements of civil service was that it has to be posted down at the police station. So we did get a couple calls about it, but really the town's involved in at this point in time is minimal. The assessment center is run by a private entity that's at an agreement, is under agreement with civil service and has to, everything, all the assessment work that they do has to be approved and within guidelines of civil service, they'll conduct that process, send their results off to civil service, and civil service come back with a list to us, prioritizing or ranking the candidates that participated. So not unlike an exam where you go in, you sign up to take an exam, you go in, you take the exam, and then the town receives the listing. That's what civil service works.
They give an indication as to what like a low number or a high number would be for applicants.
The consultants are expecting 20 to 30. That's what they're expecting. We had that conversation. They will not be surprised if we see as many as 30.
Question, Dennis. So once they go through that process, then what happens next? Do we actually interview? You interview?
We'll get a list, and it will be the full list, but we can
Right.
interview top 3, and then we'd have to screen out. So
And then
we can talk about it. Obviously, the call point is my appointment. Two members of the board could participate in that, narrow it down to 1, and then we could have that 1 appear before the full board.
Okay.
Something like what we did for the DPW drug. I think it makes sense because,
Yeah.
we've had, I'm gonna say we've had 2, 3, I think we've had full 4-time chiefs in the history of the town. The rest of them, Chief Flouette, Chief McClendon, Chief Boucher, and now Chief Day. So this will be the 5th chief and the full-time chief in the history of the town. So it's an appointment that has some longevity.
Yeah, but it's different than hiring, say, like a superintendent, because if the top person's qualified, we are locked into that person.
No,
I mean, you have to find a reason not to.
Right, we have to state a reason not to, much like when we're interviewing candidates for patrolman positions or sergeants. If we're not happy with the top choice, then we'll let them know. During our interview, we felt that the second one was more qualified than the first one because, we would have to give an explanation. That's how that works. Yeah, so it's not just a matter of you have to
Yeah.
take the first candidate.
So when can we expect to be interviewing?
February 5th, I believe, is the assessment center.
Fourth,
It's
okay.
on the 4th is the actual And depending on how many candidates, they may take over this Saturday, they may take over this building. If there are more candidates, then we can accommodate here, because essentially what you'll have is them broken down. Then we probably either, probably talk to the schools about maybe a middle school and elementary school that we could use for Saturday. And then it goes to civil service, so we're at their mercy as to how long, but probably a month. Which gives us a good timetable. We wanted to have a decision sometime early April, that the chief's retirement date is the end of May. The only other thing that I had was, obviously, we talked about it a lot, the MBTA overlay district. Next meeting, I think we had said we want to put it on the agenda and talk about what type of a committee we'll put together to start that process of looking at the zoning that we want to bring forward. And if you recall, we did do the application with DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, showing what our timeline was. It was approved, and we're on board to have this presented to town meeting November of 2024. That's all I have.
So you want that on the agenda for the
Yes.
next meeting?
Yep,
To
MBTA.
talk about the, committee?
MBTA overlay committee. So
What are your thoughts on?
I would
the
think
number,
it-
Dennis?
I
How
would
many?
think it'd be 2 members from the select board. I think someone from the planning board should want to participate. And then from there, really, it's,
How large of a committee are you thinking?
I would say as few as 5 and as many as 7, somewhere in that
Okay.
range is what I would suggest.
Okay.
Unless there's a tremendous, if we say 5 or 7, and we find out, there are a lot more people interested than that, then I think we can expand it.
And we can have residents on this committee. We don't need to just have board members from various boards,
Yeah.
which I think is a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's important to have people on the board that have some sense of the
Yes.
town process.
Yes. Anybody else? Any old business? Any new business?
Well, even though there's a football game on new business. So I expressed some concerns at the budget process last year, which I felt we were more rubber stamping things at the end of the process and wanted to do a little bit more as our board at the beginning. The school department started their budget, and I have the sense that they have no sense as to how much money they have available from the town, and it got me thinking about knowing where we are, or Mary can tell us some more information for our next meeting, where our budget was last year, what our Prop 2.5 levels are, and what our contractual obligations are. That determines, in my mind, how much wiggle room there is. Using the school as the example, special ed or other things can really take into mainstream education. And I believe I brought up the fact that if that means we have to take a harder look going in at the number when we get to what I'll call the municipal side versus the school side. I think we need to look at the budget differently, as opposed to just having people roll in front of us. And I mean, I could turn around and wouldn't matter, because I don't think that we have as much control as I would like as part of the budget process.
What we are by charter required to provide the select board is the end of the month, end of January balance budget. So you wait, traditionally, the board has waited until the 3rd week of February to hold your hearing. I mean, you get those budgets, a balanced budget, you won't have all the reports and all the particulars, but you'll have the big picture draft, if you will, certainly by the 1st week of February. I think the charter talks in terms of days, but at that point in time, you can put it on the regular board agenda, come in and present where we're at that point in time. But to suggest that we'd be ready to do that in a week or two, we won't be,
Well, from a re-engineering standpoint, I think the school department is frustrated with how much, I mean.
Maybe they're sharing that with you, but because I talked with.
I'll give you an example. So the school department, I think, has an unrealistic number for their proposed budget, and that's based on department heads saying this is what they want. And when the superintendent comes in and says we need to cut, I won't give you the number, X million dollars from the budget, and they don't know what the starting point is. And I don't think
When you
they,
say they, who are you referring to?
Peter.
Yeah.
I mean, if we take last year's budget.
Yeah.
And we know that there's more than $1 million in contractual obligations. And if they don't know whether they have 800,000 or $1.5 million, I think that's principals, myself as running a department. We have no sense as to whether what we're proposing is even like, okay, we're gonna waste our time for a month. And we do have another meeting coming up this Friday to get a better sense of the budget, but I don't think the school department knows.
Yeah, I talked with the superintendent, so maybe I've got a different relationship with him than you do, but I have a little different view of that in speaking with him as recently as last week.
So you're proposing that a number be given to the superintendent ahead of time, so they know, or at least they have a starting point to work from, so he doesn't just go in and say, we need to start cutting before they know what.
Well, if you operate under what I would say is more, not a modified zero-based budget, it's all of our departments, I think, have contractual levels that we are going to bump up against. But knowing what our growth numbers are and everything else is it $1 million? Is it 1.5? Is it 1.6? Is it some other number? I mean, some of it predates the members of the board, but we had a few years there where we say, time out every department, go back and truly do zero-based budgeting and come to the board and justify everything, as opposed to like on the police department, them walking in here and they sign up for 13, programs that the chief goes to. I mean, do they take a hard line look at it or they don't? And if people just like, oh, that's what we had last year, so we're just gonna add some new numbers. I expressed a concern at the end of last year's budget process, and I'm speaking out now to say I have a concern right now. My concern is not that it's flawed. My concern is we as the board waste our time at the end of the process. Because we rarely tell anyone to go back and change their numbers.
So you're trying to get some, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So you're trying to get more sense what they need or what we,
What direction we're giving our department.
Yeah, I think we do much the same as we go through the budgets that the school department does publicly. Myself and Mary will meet with the departments, not just the departments that you see, but we'll meet with just about every department, go through the budgets, find out where we can trim, what we can cut back. But yeah, as far as the school department and coming up with a projection, part of the problem is we haven't done our own projections yet. As far as, I mean, the process has started, but to come up with hard revenue projections right now is difficult. We're 6 months into this year and we're projecting, keep in mind, our projections are for the year beginning July 1 as far as revenue goes up next year. So obviously every day we get a little bit more information. The governor's budget this year is going to be late because it's a new governor, so it'll probably be, I'm guessing, the end of the month as opposed to
It's an
usually.
additional 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's typically due the last Wednesday of January, but with the new change in administration, the statute allows an additional 3-week delay
Middle of February.
in
Yeah.
the latter part of February.
Yeah, we're not gonna know what funding we have or.
From the state,
From the
I
state,
mean,
right,
but-
right.
Yeah,
But
right.
that's a big part of our budget.
It certainly is, yeah.
Can I just ask a question? Sorry, I wasn't jumping in the conversation, but so the frustration that you're sort of sharing with us regarding this putting together the individual department budgets for the school department. A lot of it is driven by the directive that the department heads are given on the type of budget that they're being asked to compile. So were the department heads asked to compile a level services budget or a budget that
list
includes,
budget.
it's a wish list, okay. There's a big difference, you know, a lot of our departments on the town side have been given the directive of level services, which obviously needs to factor in our contractual obligations, but not necessarily expanding into new programs. So I think, you know, we approach it from a sort of.
Yeah,
different perspective.
I'm very close to the school because I work there. And I see perhaps more opportunities to improve the school department. And what I think is different about the school budget versus, say, the fire department, the police department, and DPW, is that student population causes changes to needs. If there is an influx of kindergarten, if there's an influx of English language learners, which it's out of control in this town, which is an interesting other discussion, that's putting a strain, and the school department gets measured on obviously its budget, but the amount of money that is available for, for want of a better term, the mainstream population. And if a special needs student or other program were to take $300,000 in added need, then the decision has to be made as to where does that $300,000 come up to? And do you take it out of other programs or money that we're already giving them to lower or create our minimum school funding as required by the state? And I don't have all the numbers to say, but in years past, I believe that when special ed is spiked, the money didn't come from the town, it was simply cut from somewhere else. And there's desires in the school department to implement programs or adjust class size or do any number of things that the school committee and others have to make tough decisions as to what they are willing to go without. There's also grants that are several $100,000 that when they come to their fruition or up for renewal, it's a question as to whether you keep successful programs or you don't programs. And
But isn't that what the school department should be presenting to us, whether it's Mr. Morano or the school superintendent, the school superintendent or the school committee?
well, over the past several years, it seems like, you know, we say the number is, and if we say the number is 800,000 and their contractual obligations are 1.1 million, they're cutting deeper. So you may be ahead of the game relative to that number already, and it's not disclosed to everyone. But they're presenting at school committee tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I'd tune in.
And I believe what I was told is their draft budget is increased by 2.6 million. But they recognize that that's a wish list budget.
Yep.
And
What's the reason of the increase?
well, it's a wish list budget, so I'm sure that everybody's putting in everything that they'd like to have. I haven't seen it.
There's things like another English teacher in the high school, and then there's special ed costs, there's I think the transportation budget's a wild card, given that the school committee has changed their tune on buying buses, and
Right.
there's,
Because they saved a lot of money by, it looked like they're better off not buying than buying them
Yes.
because of the,
liability.
well, I thought it was the special ed.
Anyways, I brought it up at the end of the last budget cycle and I put it out there.
So it sounds like there might need to be a bigger conversation that's had a little more.
I think the question is whether we
Upfront
want to be involved more.
Well, I'm curious as to what your re-engineering is. And what are you proposing? I want to know.
I
What
could
have we
look at
done right, but I'd love to know your ideas on re-engineering.
knowing where we were at the, I mean, it's a math problem, where we were at the end of last year's budget plus contractual obligations is your starting point. And then from there, it's where does that compare to Prop 2.5? Where does that compare to new growth? And then assuming there's extra money, which it may not be, how do you distribute that throughout the town? And some of that distribution and maybe pure rudimentary determines how much money we have left on the table for capital projects in the fall. I mean,
Yeah, but
Would
that's
you
not,
change-
that's not money that you would budget into the operating budget. Capital fund says-
no, I'm not saying that, but I mean, when we have just, you know, if I make round numbers, if we had 50 million last year and Prop 2.5 gives us $51,125, and contractual obligations make us to 50.15, where does that extra money come up? Is it new development?
Didn't they have still money left from the ARPA funds and that they had to be used? Is that something could be different?
I'm not
The
sure.
school department?
Yeah,
The school
then
They do have some additional monies available from some of their ESSER funds.
Yeah.
You have to remember that those ARPA funds are one-time revenues, so you don't want to be using one-time revenues for long-term operating.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not sustainable.
okay, that's what I'm trying to understand it.
Yep, and the school department has been programming those funds in to meet certain needs. A lot of the needs are, I guess, what you could probably categorize as temporary in order to bring some of the students back up to, back up to compliance, if you will, for some of the support services that they need that are temporary. But we wouldn't be using ARPA funding to support the operating budget.
There's two different things then,
Yeah, one of the things that we had done historically, we haven't done it in a while, and I was talking to Mr. Morano about meeting with him along with the chairman of the school committee as well as the chairperson of, I think we talked about this, select board, vice chair, and obviously you can have more than two.
Right.
But getting back to that type of situation, I believe he was looking at getting some dates. So I know that that is something that they had planned on as well, kind of having a bigger sit down so that there is more of a conversation. We used to do it. I don't know. We did do it while you were chair. So
And I reached out to the chair of the school committee and we tried to set something up. We just kept this in between work and different things, so.
but that will be because I have not heard that what you're describing, but certainly I know that they've got a wish list that's something that beyond.
Yeah, I would, wish list is a good explanation for it.
Yeah.
The other thing, and my last comments about the budget, I don't think was actionable tonight, but the other thing that I've heard people not complain, but express concern, they think that we're going to have capacity issues in our schools because of all the development in town. And we've already been told by the MAPC and others that school numbers are actually going down or leveling.
Yeah.
But I think if the board and the school committee are meeting, that be a topic so that we have a document that can project that out and say to people, you don't know what you're talking about, because these authorities say that people hear about 700 apartments or Red Mill and other things. And it's like, where are we going to put them in the schools? And it's like, that's not a problem.
There's plenty of room.
It's
The
logical
latest
to think
projection
that.
shows 2030 will actually be down 100. We're just saying it.
Yeah.
And, they project all the new development and
Mhm.
project it off of birth rates.
But it's always good, I mean, when social media hits, it's say, go to this link on the website and say, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, as opposed to what you really want to say to people on social media.
Well,
I'm sorry. The projections was like, it was supposed to go down almost like a 20%, right?
Not 20%, but what I saw was what Mr. Morano had told me was down. They're actually projecting a reduction of like 100 students by 2030.
Yep.
The population right now is actually under 2,000. It's like 1,980. I think the population 1,980. So it'll actually be down, which logically you think all the housing that we're putting in town is going to go up, but it actually continues to come down. And the projections that they've done in the past have been pretty good. It's done off of birth rates. They're able to project kindergarten classes 4 years in advance because they can see how many children have been born in town. Right, some will move out, some will move in.
So that saved you from having the fastest meeting under your two
That's
minutes.
okay. I don't know, no big deal. But speaking of social media, I'm just gonna spend a couple of minutes, and I think it was, Michael just said it, and I was not gonna say anything tonight, but since you just opened it up, I think it's really important, and Dennis and I have had this conversation. Kelly and I had a brief conversation about this too, is that when we see these, and again, you can treat social media however you personally want to treat it. But from a board's perspective, it's just my thought that we refrain from reacting to social media posts. And I'd love to have this conversation with other board members in this town, unless we're going to provide some form of education or provide facts. You know what I mean? We just need
Which
to
is
provide
exactly
facts.
what I do.
You
Yeah.
need to- I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying in general.
Thanks.
I think in general, it's our responsibility, not just to slander or to say, yeah, you know, you're right, it's just more mosquitoes or whatever it is. That we actually provide a base of education. So if you, I just refrain, like you want to say something, I'm just saying, take a deep breath, don't say it. If you want to help, educate, use that forum to educate. But research first, talk to Dennis, talk to whomever, get the facts, then post the facts. That's all I ask from this board and any other board in this town. Because it's, to me, it's just like the whole Rotary here in town. It just goes nuts.
We
It
did a
just goes
conversation
nuts.
with a particular individual, put some misinformation out there.
On the- Yeah,
Yeah.
a board member.
I haven't seen any select board members do anything like that, unless you have an example of something.
No, I'm not saying us. I'm just saying in general. I'm not, I didn't say.
I agree, I
us.
think that. as a-
I
as
just
a
say in
statement,
general.
Do we, as a board member or any board member,
Yeah.
you go out there and then you basically, on the social media, you spread something and it's not true. Is there any clause, it's dismissible?
Well, it all depends. It all depends. You can be dismissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it all depends on what it is and the impact that it has. I mean, that just really comes down to, you know, Dennis and the board itself.
I think we have a policy, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, that's what
But
I'm-
but it's not, but it's
Like
not a social media. I don't
I'm
think we
just
have
talking about the
a
town.
social
No,
media.
we do have-
Policy for employees.
Employees,
But it has more to do with from your workstation and.
It's not what you say.
But also, you have to keep in mind, posting on social media can become problematic if you violate open meeting law.
That's right. Mhm.
Regulations as well. So if you have a quorum of a board responding in various contexts on a
Throughout that
particular
thread,
thread,
Like
you've now
it's-
violated open meeting law regulations. So really, boards should be very, very resistant to responding to social media posts. And if they are going to, then you designate one person to share a common, an agreed upon response.
Mhm.
But open meeting law can be very problematic in that arena.
That is something.
I turn off all notifications every now and then. Somebody will say something to me and I'll go to it and I'll read it. But I have no notifications turning me on. All right, anything else? Thank you for indulging me for a minute or two. Nothing else? Being that we have satisfied our agenda, I call for a motion to close our meeting.
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second. We have a first, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Go Dogs.
Go TCU.
I'd like to see